Devon Taylor, Devon Taylor, Devon Taylor, Devon Taylor podcast. Devon Taylor, Devon Taylor, Devon Taylor, all around the world tell their unique and powerful stories to not only for their voice to be heard, but for you to leave feeling inspired. Today's guest is someone who brings a deeply grounded and soulful perspective to the journey of healing and transformation. Our next guest is a trauma-informed guide and integration therapist devoted to helping others reconnect with their most authentic selves. Please welcome to the show, Julian Bermudez. Hello.
Hi, Devon. Thank you for having me.
Of course. Thank you for being here. So, like with every guest I've had on the podcast, I just really love to start with, where you started with your journey to becoming integration therapist, being trauma informed. How did that journey start for you? And I know it's probably a convoluted question that could start at many different points, but I just love that transformation of seeing people from, where they came from to where they are now. So if you can kind of just give our guest a little background.
Yeah, absolutely. I will give you a little my story, my origins in a nutshell. How about that? Well, I grew up in Detroit, Michigan. I was born in 1987, and my parents were very young, relatively speaking. My dad was 19, my mom was 21, and they're biracial as well. So my mom is her mother was from Germany, moved here after the Second World War, and my father is Mexican and Puerto Rican, and his parents moved here as well. So I was growing up in this really racially motivated and highly segregated area with parents that were very young, and needless to say, they didn't really want me around very much. So as I was modeling one parent, as children do, the other parent hated me for it. And they just kind of bounced me around a lot. And the internal message that I got was that there's something wrong with me, that I'm defective, that I'm not good enough, or I'm not worthy of connection or love or having my needs met. And so this created just tremendous pain inside of me. And when I was in my early 20s, I kind of got to the end of that road where living with this pain just wasn't sustainable anymore. I wasn't going to last much longer. And so I kind of focused all of that pain that I was in and all of the adaptations that I had to that pain into really understanding trauma and understanding addictions in particular. And so I channeled all of my energy and resources into academic study. And through that process, I started learning a lot about psychology, therapy, really trying to figure out how I could help people who are going through this, but mainly trying to figure out how can I transform this inside myself. It was mostly for self-application. I wanted to learn how to feel okay in life and ideally to thrive and enjoy life. And so that was what really sparked me on this journey. I didn't find very many answers in university, of course. And so through my own personal study, independent study, I found some incredible teachers that were in addiction health and trauma therapy. And of course, that opened up into psychedelic integration as well. And so I studied that for about 10 years. And then the more that I was able to transform the pain that was inside of me, the more that I started becoming more of who I was and peeling back these layers of adaptations to that pain that I was carrying around, the more I was able to transform that pain, more and more people started coming to me wanting help doing the exact same thing. So as time progressed, I started doing this as my full-time practice, and that's where I am now.
Love it. So I'd love for you to describe for all of my guests who aren't familiar with trauma-informed guides. I mean, you also said that you integrate, what was it? I'm sorry. I think I missed it in the beginning, but you integrate, what is it? You just said it. I'm sorry.
Psychedelic integration, is that it?
Yes, yeah. So if you could describe for our guests just what that means in practice and how did you come, I mean, obviously you explained how you came into this work, but what does that mean in practice?
Yeah. So the word psychedelic itself is broken into two parts. It has two roots, which is psyche and delic. Psyche refers to all of the immaterial aspects of who we are, all of the non-physical characteristics of us that constitutes this individual or these humans that we have. So our thoughts, our minds, our emotions, our spirituality, all of these parts that we can't touch or feel, but exist, and they constitute part of who we are. So we have the psyche, the soul, and then we have delic, which is manifesting or emerging. So when we put these two together, what we really have is a deep connection to oneself, an emerging of who we truly are. And so when people have these experiences, that's usually what they describe as, I felt incredibly connected to myself. I felt incredibly connected to the world around me. My conditioned way of thinking, these perceptions that I've developed about myself and the world, they were able to subside a little bit, and I was able to see things in a different light. So that's the therapy that we do right there, is to try to facilitate this deep connection to ourself. The thing that is usually in the way of being authentic with who we are is trauma. And I would define trauma as when bad things happen that shouldn't happen, or good things that should happen don't happen. But it's not specifically about the thing that happens. It's the result of what happens. So in order for something to become traumatic, there has to be some sort of constriction involved. There has to be some sort of limiting or confinement of how we behave, how we perceive the world around us, how we process thoughts and information, and then what we do with our emotions. So what happens when we go through trauma is we adapt to it in whatever means are available to us. And usually this starts very early in life. So when we go through trauma, we build up these adaptations to the pain, and these adaptations then become what we might call a personality trait. We make ourselves very big and grandiose and assertive, or we make ourselves very small and agreeable to people please to maintain our attachments. We might suppress our emotions or depress our emotions for that matter, meaning we don't express what we feel. We might stuff our boundaries down and sacrifice ourselves or our boundaries in order to make other people happy. Numerous ways that we adapt to pain. We might develop distractions to disconnect from the present, to disconnect from what we're feeling, and these would become addictions later in life. So all of these layers of adaptations kind of pile on to ourselves. And so when we have this psychedelic integration and we're doing trauma therapy, what we're trying to do is, one, recognize, identify how trauma shapes us. What is it? How did it affect us? And how did we adapt to it? And then we want to build the ability to recognize and identify when those adaptations to pain from the past, so when pain from the past is showing up in the present. And then we want to cultivate some sort of agency and responsibility and choice making to liberate ourselves from those patterns. So in a gist, that's what it looks like.
Wow, very powerful. And I've done some work, with, my therapist was one of the guests that was on the show, and a lot of the things that I was coming across was just not being able to recognize when the bad habits are the moments where I wasn't being open. Even in my relationship, that's been something that we struggled with the openness. This just came to my mind as you were talking, and I wanted to ask, just personally for myself, what is one way that we can become more aware to those times that we're not really being open with our emotions, or we're being closed off, without, in my case, like feeling like I'm being called out if someone were to tell me, or I'm being judged in a
Hmm.
sense.
Okay. Well, since you mentioned your personal experience, is it okay if I use that
Oh
as the
yeah.
example? Okay,
Yeah,
terrific.
I'd love, yeah,
Mhm.
please.
Okay, so when this sense of being called out or judged is present, what is it that you feel in that moment?
Most of the time, it's anger.
Okay.
Yeah, it's anger most of the time, because it's the reaction that I give. I'll use my partner, for example, the reaction I
Hmm.
give to my partner, that, makes him react. And then it becomes kind of like a spiral.
Yeah, a negative feedback loop. What do you usually do with your anger?
I bottle up
Hmm.
most of the time, and then it usually will explode at some
Okay.
point.
Yeah, that's what happens with the anger, right? We stuff it down. It's kind of like chaining a monster up in the basement and throwing scraps down there. Or putting a pressure cooker on the stove and gradually turning the heat up. Eventually it
Yeah.
pops and it just comes out in inappropriate ways. So, what is the consequence or the bad thing that happens if you're being judged or being called out?
Like, what am I upset about, or what am I?
Yeah, what happens? What's the bad thing that happens if somebody were to judge you? or to call you out, what then is the consequence? What happens after that?
I just go back to my childhood when
Mhm,
whenever I felt judged by other kids, it would always just lead to me feeling really sad and
mhm,
wanting to cry, but feeling too embarrassed to cry in front of people. So
mhm.
another, bottling up the emotions. Yeah, it just brings me to those moments of just feeling really, really, really sad and not
Uh-huh.
like having a way to like defend myself. I don't know.
Okay. So now you did a big step for me there. We went right to the early origins of where this adaptation to pain started to develop. What would have happened, Devon, if you would have expressed your anger when you were younger?
I just felt like a release almost. Like I feel like I would
Mhm.
have been able to just be more like authentic myself. I
Yeah.
don't know. I guess that's what came naturally to my mind. I would just feel more like at ease because it wouldn't
Uh-huh.
be so bottled up.
Okay. Terrific. So then where did you learn to suppress your anger?
That's a good question. I think most of us learn, and speaking for myself, most of us probably learn from our parents. In the ways that if we do something wrong and how they react will
Mhm,
completely determine how we, in most cases, interact with the world. And I can definitely say, just my mom was pretty hard on us when we were little.
mhm,
And I didn't really have my dad in the home, and it was always like a stepdad who was
mhm.
just as hard, or if not harder,
Yeah.
like my mom. So
Mm,
yeah, I would say probably from my parents.
yeah. So now we're really identifying the trauma. The trauma that you're identifying here is that at an early age, very early age, you had to make a choice, an unconscious choice. It's not a deliberate where we sit here and we weigh out the options choice. It's an adaptation style choice. So when we're developing, we have two fundamental needs here. The first and foremost is for attachment. We cannot survive as children without connections to our caregivers or our parents. As
Mm.
humans, we're the most immature, undeveloped, dependent species that we can find on this planet for the longest amount of time. It takes a human 3, 4 years to learn how to run, to where a horse runs on their first day of life. So we have to be cared for as we're developing. So we cannot survive without attachments. That's the first most important fundamental need that we have. The next fundamental need is to be authentic, meaning that we express our emotions when we feel them. We can set boundaries when somebody's pushing in or causing us harm is not meeting our fundamental needs. So if our parents are not meeting our needs, we can express our emotions. Every human is born with the ability to express their emotions. Every 2-day-old baby will let you know when they are hungry or when they want to be held. They don't care if you have to work. They don't care if you're tired. We have the ability to express emotions. But what you just described to me is a conflict between these two fundamental needs. What happens when your emotions, your authenticity, your expression, your unique individual experience threatens your attachments? One of these has to go, and you can't survive without the attachments. So this big pain right here of having your attachments threatened by who you are is the trauma. And the way we adapt to that trauma is by suppressing our emotions. So here we see an adaptation that's playing out today. So your original question was, how do we become aware of that? How do we identify this in the present moment? Well, the first thing that we can do is start to build a relationship with that feeling of anger. Now, when you feel anger, you mentioned it's because a lot of the times a sense of being judged or called out. And I asked you what the consequence was of that. And we just found the answer to that. The consequence is if I'm angry, I lose my attachments. So here we see the pain from childhood, this original pain showing up here in the present. So, what do we want to do with this? First thing is we want to recognize the feeling. When you get angry, Devon, what does it feel like in your body?
It's like an uncontrollable sensation to like the best word I can think of is like bark back or like say something, in
Hmm.
defense or
Okay. It sounds like something kind of bursting out of you.
yeah.
Okay.
It's like it's almost like hard to contain sometimes when I'm
Okay.
angry and feeling like my back is against the wall. Yeah.
Yeah. What does it feel like physically, physical sensation in your body. What do you feel there? Is there a heat? Is there a weight? Is there a tension, a constriction? Is your heartbeat going up? Is your breathing getting constricted? What do you feel?
Feels like heat. If I'm really angry, sometimes, I can talk and feel like I'm like out of breath almost, or like I'm
Hmm.
having a hard time, like, getting everything out. But
Hmm.
mostly like heat. Like I get angry, I start sweating.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I can just like feel it in my face. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So in your face, you feel heat, and there's a bit of a conflict. On the one hand, there's something that wants to explode out, but then there's this other side of stuff it back down. Don't let that out. Is that right?
Yep.
Okay.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Terrific. So, how often would you say you feel this heat and this tension and this weight in your breathing or this tension in your face? How often is that there?
I've done a lot of work.
Hmm.
So the moments have been more, I guess, like I'm being fully transparent, putting myself out here, people. It's that we've been in arguments, I've gotten like I don't want to say used to it, but used to it, and kind of adapted in a way where it's like
Hmm.
you feel numb and like it's, like, shoving it down and not really responding. And,
Hmm.
I would say if it's how often, maybe at least once a week.
Once a week. Okay.
Yeah.
And you're mentioning, I think you said the word numb, right? Stuffing down. In other words, the way that it sounds like you're saying you adapt to this anger being present is to stuff it down and try and disconnect from it.
Yeah.
Okay. So that's
Absolutely.
that's the same pattern you learned as a kid, isn't it?
Hmm.
Okay. So what we want to start to do here, Devon, here's a practice, which is to, instead of trying to stuff this down, instead of trying to disconnect from it and numb it, remember what you told me earlier when you said, if I would have expressed it, I would have felt a relief. I think I would have felt much more, what was it? You said a relief. And did you say calm?
Yeah, like calm and just like at
Mhm.
ease.
At ease. Okay. So if we express it, we'll feel calm, relief, at ease. But if we repress it and stuff it down and try and disconnect from it, it bottles up until it explodes. So
Mhm.
here's the dichotomy, the balance of what we're working with here. And right now, the dominant pattern is to stuff it down and disconnect from it, because you learned at an early age, this is how we survive. So, what we want to do is, rather than disconnecting from this feeling of anger that is so dangerous and overwhelming, is what we can do is start to build a relationship with it, right? What do you think your relationship with anger is right now?
I probably, here and there, think that
Mhm.
it's gotten better because I've done some work, but
Mhm.
there's still that, I guess, just unresolved
Yes.
pain, or
Yeah.
unresolved. I don't even know what the word is. Like there's like a feeling that it's still there. It's unresolved, and it still
Mhm.
needs to be,
Yeah.
I guess, processed.
Terrific. And I just want to make an observation here, and this is not a criticism or a judgment, but whenever I ask you about your relationship with your emotions, a judgment comes out right away. Do you notice that?
Mm. Oh, I did notice.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm one of my hardest critics, I would say.
Hmm.
And it's been something that it's followed me throughout my life in different stages. And even
Yeah.
now, like,
Hmm.
as we're speaking, I just, I couldn't help but take the moment to just like, take what you were saying and like figure out for myself, like, okay, I mean, I'm going through this currently and not processing all of my emotions in the ways that I feel would be the most healthy. And yeah, it's something that has just followed me. And
Hmm.
I've gone and seen different practitioners for it and tried to
Yeah.
do my own work for it. And it's still something that I would say I'm struggling with. So
Yeah. Well, you don't have to struggle with it anymore, right? See, you learned at a very early age to be harsh to yourself. You told me about your stepdads or your mom's partners, and your mom was pretty harsh on you too. It's very easy for a child who's developing to mistake criticism, judgment, evaluation, and punishment for compassion, connection. And that's usually what we go through. So we don't have to do that. We don't have to be harsh and judgmental and critical to ourselves, which is where I'm getting at with this practice. So your relationship with anger, it sounds like, tell me if I'm wrong here, you don't like it.
no.
Yeah, you want it to go away. Anybody ever exiled you or told you to go away or told you you can't connect with us if you behave like that?
If I behave like I'm angry,
Or just anyway, that you can't be accepted as you are. How did that make you feel?
like crap, like
Of course. Yeah, of course, right?
Yeah.
So this anger, it's a part of you, isn't it? You
Hmm.
feel it inside of you. And here you want it to go away. You don't like it. And you know when you're treated like you don't like you're not liked or welcomed, it feels like crap. So we can see the outcome of the relationship that you have with yourself is it leads you to feeling like crap. So what we want to start to do, here's the practice, is we start to tune in to pay attention to that anger. You don't have to wait for it to come exploding out. What you can do all throughout the day is turn your attention into that feeling in your face. You go and look for it and you say, you don't have to be alone anymore. You don't
Hmm.
have to go to your room until you can regulate and then you can come back out. I'm going to be here with you and I'm going to pay attention to you because that anger is there for a reason, isn't it? What do you think that? Go ahead.
No, I was gonna say absolutely. I think it's there. I've been told that anger is a part of like a protection mechanism for us. And I think that's a part of it. The anger is there to help protect us in a sense.
Yeah, absolutely.
But
So, what was the anger protecting you from?
in those moments, like when I think back to my childhood,
Hmm.
from not feeling, in a way, like trying to like make me not feel bad about what others were saying about me or how I was being perceived, or it was
Yeah.
its way of protecting me in a sense, I guess.
Yeah, because when you're being judged, evaluated, criticized, and punished, you're being disconnected and isolated. In other words, you're being threatened with the thing that's most important to you, your attachments, which you can't survive without. So, this anger is quite literally a survival mechanism. It's trying to protect you, it's trying to preserve you, it's trying to defend you. So, while it might not express itself in the most healthy and constructive ways today, it's a trusted old friend who's been with you since the beginning, who is absolutely trying to help you. I'm not
Mm.
saying that we want this friend driving the car that we're in because they're a little danger prone, but how loyal and resilient is this friend? So what we want to do is we want to turn our attention into that feeling where this friend exists and start to build a relationship with them. So that way it's seen, this friend it's acknowledged, it's accepted as it is, and then it doesn't have to explode and come bursting out the seams whenever it thinks that you're in danger. Let me ask you one last question here, which
Yeah.
is when you first started feeling this anger, when you were younger and you were dealing with all of these traumatic events, what do you think you really needed at that time?
Right away, my mind just said love.
Perfect. What does that look like?
I mean, like in those situations, I just wanted to be accepted. I wanted to
Hmm.
be loved by my friends and have,
Perfect.
a good time, and for us
Hmm.
to, make memorable moments. That's not what
Perfect.
was happening. And so it was like a conflicting feeling inside of my body of like, oh, why is this
Yes.
happening to me?
Yes, of course. Okay. So let's break that down a little bit. So, in order for you to be loved, connected, have a good time, you got to be with somebody. Somebody's got to be there. So, you
Yeah.
needed somebody to be with you. And then they need to see you and hear you and understand what you're feeling and then to accept that, right?
Right.
Okay, so somebody to be with you, somebody to see and hear you, to understand what you're going through, and then to accept. Yes, you're angry because you want to have connection. You want to be valued. You want to be attuned to somebody, and you want to play. You want to have fun. You want to have interactions and engagements. All necessary parts of being a human. So, fundamental human needs, right? And of course, you need this consistently, right? It doesn't work if it just happens once and then never happens again. Okay.
Mhm.
So that anger is there because you want connection. You want presence, understanding. You want to be understood, heard, accepted, and valued. Those are all really, really good things, aren't they?
I think those are the most optimal things in this world is,
Yeah.
I think it's just because I've struggled a lot with, friend groups and
Mhm.
relationships. It's just, yeah, I would love to just be understood in such a beautiful,
Mhm.
loving way.
You got it. So now here's where it starts is when that anger is present, you don't want to understand it. You don't want to connect with it. You want to push it away.
Mhm.
So how can you expect somebody else to love and connect with you and be present with you if your relationship with yourself is to suppress and disconnect and exile? In other words, the relationship that we have to ourselves is a mirror for how other people are going to treat us.
Wow.
Yeah. So what we want to start to do here is build that relationship, that loving, accepting relationship with what we're feeling. And you can start with that anger because
Mhm.
it's there trying to get that connection. So when it comes, so what we do is before it comes up, of course, is we try to connect with it. You can just take 5 minutes, 3 times a day. Like that's 15 minutes out of the day. I spend 15 minutes doing way more unproductive, distracting things. Looking at nonsense on YouTube, right? Things that are not going to leave me feeling nourished or connected in any
Yeah.
way. So to carve 15 minutes out of the day for ourselves is to say, I'm worth it. I'm valuable enough to have this. And what we do is we tune our attention into that feeling, that anger that's there. And we say, you're not going to be alone. You really want connection. You really want acceptance. You want to be understood and valued. I'm going to be the one to do it. And I'm going to sit here for this amount of time at least, and I'm going to listen to you. And I'm going to try and understand you. And I'm going to be with you. You don't have to change it. You don't have to fix it. You don't have to get rid of it. All you want to do is build a relationship with it and really, really try to understand the needs this feeling has. And then, of course, well, quite coincidentally, all the needs that that anger has, you're already doing it. You're doing it for yourself. So now when that anger comes out in the moment, rather than repressing it, what you can do is express those fundamental needs that it has in much more healthy, constructive ways. So you're familiar with it and you know, I'm feeling this anger right now because I want more connection, or I want to be seen or understood, or I want to be valued and respected. And I want to have fun. I want to play. So when you get angry with your partner, rather than it just coming out and exploding in whatever way it does, now you can say, you know, I got to tell you, I'm feeling some anger right now. It's not your fault. You didn't do anything wrong. This anger is just here because I really want to have more connection, more depth, more understanding, more acceptance. And I want to play and have some fun and make some wonderful memories together. And this anger, I understand if it comes bursting out, it's actually going to cause the opposite of those things. So I'm really hoping that we can try to connect a little bit right now, and we can try to understand each other and maybe do some things that we both like to do and make some memories together.
I love that. I've never really thought about it in that way as far as like befriending anger or, knowing that it's on your side. I've always thought that, like my anger was my problem. That it's what
Yeah,
made me not good enough. I don't know.
of
But
course.
I appreciate you for saying this and just, giving me some like a path at least to restructure this and kind of use it for my benefit. Because like you said, anger is here for us to help us
That's right.
to
That's right.
navigate.
Yeah. Yeah. You know, when you were angry as a child, what message did you get from your mom or your mom's boyfriends? It was that you were a problem, right? Yeah, and you had to be regulated. You needed some sort of control mechanism to correct this bad behavior. All the messages there are, there's something wrong with me. I'm not good enough.
Yeah.
And that's how that pain from the past continues to show up in the present, and how that same cycle of being exiled and disconnected and judged and criticized continues today. So, this is an area now where you have tremendous power to reclaim some responsibility and some agency and liberate yourself from that old pattern.
Absolutely. I love that. I love that you even pointed that out. It's in my hands now,
Right?
once you have the knowing,
Yeah.
it's really what you do with it.
Yeah. And
Uh,
it's not your fault.
yeah.
There's nobody to blame here. There's no point in blaming anybody because you just adapted to it in the ways that you could. You went through pain. And now, what kind of parent pushes that kind of pain onto their kids? Yeah, it's somebody who's in a lot of pain themselves, right? They learned it from somewhere too. So, in other words, your mother and your stepfathers and all the other people who were in your life who were doing that, they were going through that exact same pain themselves.
Yep. It's so funny you said that because my mom, as I've been talking to her and getting closer with her and just learning
Mhm.
more about what she went through as a kid, she went through a lot.
Yep.
She had, a lot of situations with her father and her mother
Hmm.
where, it called for her just wanting to be seen or, accepted. It makes a lot of sense, how things repeat. And even my stepdad, he was sent to a boarding school. Just not being with your parents, I can only imagine how that could, create a different dynamic when you're raising kids
Yeah.
for
And
yourself. But
and the abuse that happens in boarding schools, right? There's so much of it because there's nobody there to protect you. And so then there's so much anger that comes out and there's so much need to control situations. And then here's, a poor little kid who's very vulnerable and susceptible to being controlled and to being having all of that pain pushed onto them. And the pattern goes round and round. But now we can take a lot of responsibility for that. We're not responsible for the things that happen to us, but we are responsible for what we do with that.
absolutely. So I just feel this was awesome, by the way. Thank you so much for
Mhm.
even, taking my question and going so deep with me. I just it kind of relates to like my next question, which obviously you're helping people reconnect to who they truly are,
Mhm.
which I can say right now that it felt really good to just be able to name my anger, see it, recognize it, and accept it in a completely different way. But what would you say are the most common signs that someone is living out of alignment or within their authentic self?
It's probably more difficult to identify when somebody's being authentic these days. Or maybe not difficult, but rare. All of these traits that we would call a personality, each one of those, every one of those is an adaptation to some pain in the environment. And we learned it at an early age. So everybody that I see and that I work with and that I meet out there, including my teachers, the people who have been doing this for decades, myself included, we're continuously acting out various adaptations that disconnect us or are piled on and creating this divide from who we truly are. We're almost always acting out some form of adaptation to pain. So it's not difficult to find those. It's almost more rare to find the actual authentic expression.
I 100% agree. And even in doing this podcast or putting myself out there to speak on any topic, it feels
Mhm,
so hard to, I don't know, even want to say feel authentic, but that's
mhm.
the truth. It feels hard to feel authentic sometimes because
Yeah.
I worry about the perception of what others are thinking or, people may respond in negative ways. How would you say that, we can embrace more of our authenticity, our authentic self?
Yeah, I completely relate with you. Just started doing podcasts a couple months ago, and I had put it off for so long for those exact same reasons. And when we really look at what that's saying there, okay, we're afraid of judgment. We're afraid of criticism or evaluation because it results in a very specific consequence. And that consequence, as we just identified, is I lose my attachments, right? In other words, it's a threat to my survival is quite literally the experience that we're having. It's not logical or reasonable or even rooted in any truth to where we are now because we're both grown adults at this point. And if somebody on the internet doesn't like me, it poses no threat to my survival. But the perception that we have and the experience that we do have is that it is a threat. It is so big that it will harm me in major ways. So what we can do here is be very aware of that and recognize and identify when that exact same pain, that choice that we had to make as kids between our attachments and our authenticity is at play again. Now, ideally, these two would go together very well. Our relationships would be strengthened by our authenticity. And the way that we get there is by building that connection to ourselves. So if we're constantly judging ourselves, if we're constantly evaluating, criticizing, punishing, and exiling ourselves, of course, we're going to find that all over the world. But if we can start to build a secure relationship with ourselves, one that we really wanted when we were younger with our parents that we didn't get, if we can cultivate that now, what does it matter if somebody on the internet or somebody that we're talking to says, you know what, Julian, you're a freaking idiot and I don't like anything that you say? That's okay. That's their opinion and that's a reflection of what they're going through and their pain that they're carrying around. I'm secure enough over here. Of course, I'm not there yet. I don't know if I ever will be, but we can always continue to take steps to foster that connection to ourselves. And the more secure that connection becomes, the stronger it becomes, the less we get threatened by those external things that are happening out there that we see as very big threats now.
I would even, I've been trying to do more of what feels right to me or like taking my time with it, like if I feel called to put an episode out there, whether, like you said, someone's reaction is going to be negative or not, I'm doing it for myself. And I think that's been really helpful for me navigating, trying to figure this all out. What would you say? How would you say? Because I think the hardest thing for people that are hearing this, how do we stay committed to our healing journey? And I'm just, I'm speaking for myself a lot of this because I'm hearing you talk, and I love this because I've done a lot of different work and worked with a lot of different practitioners, and hearing you speak about this and just bringing this back to me is really, it's like almost like putting me in the seat again of sitting in front of someone and hearing them help me through these issues that we have or that I have. And so I'm being a little selfish right now. So what
You
would you
don't
say?
you don't have to judge yourself.
Thank you. Thank
Hmm.
you. But I just really want to know how can we stay committed to our healing journey and our authenticity? Yeah, what would you say?
What are the things that take us away from it? Right? The
Yeah.
distractions, the being busy, the tasks. And if we really look at, well, what do those things do for us? And what does being busy and acquiring status and positions and wealth and respect do for us? Well, it fills a void because we don't have those things already. In other words, there's a deep sense of I'm not good enough. And so I go be busy. I go and acquire the status and the positions and the respect and the money and all the things out there in order to be good enough. And I heard Prince say this one time. He said, if you're chasing money, if money is what makes you happy, you're never going to find it because money is numbers and numbers are never ending. And that's exactly how it is when we're distracting with all of these external things out in the world. Because if our wealth and our value and our respect is based on what we do and what we contribute to other people, as soon as we stop doing that, we've lost all of our value. So, what we want to do is we want to start to cultivate self value, which is exactly what you were just describing by saying, I'll put out an episode when I want to put out an episode, and it's for me. I'm not doing this for external validation. So that's a sign right there that you've done tremendous work already. And we just continue to make it a priority, make ourselves a priority. What we tell ourselves there is, I'm good enough. I'm worthy of attention, of acceptance, of being valued and being connected. And this isn't something that happens overnight. It's something that develops and matures with time and with patience and with persistence. Just like learning anything, like when you're, learning animation and learning how to write a book or learning how to play an instrument or speak a language or do anything, it requires patience, time, commitment, perseverance. And so there's going to be times where it's difficult and where it's not working so well. And we're very angry with ourselves. And, oh, I'm being critical again. I'm judging myself again. I'm back in that loop. And all we got to do is come back to sitting still. Give us 5 minutes, 10 minutes, 15 minutes, an hour if you can do it. Just sit still and pay attention to what we're feeling. And the more and more we can do this and unplug from all those, we could even call them anesthetics, all the things that numb us from what we're going through or disconnect us from what we're going through or distract us from it. The more we can unplug from all of those, the more we get those fundamental needs that you identified earlier: presence, attention, connection, understanding, acceptance. We get all of those things met. And then once we have it for ourselves, we can do it with other people and we can share it with other people. And this is how we really enrich in our lives. And once we can get this pattern, this practice rolling, it almost becomes like a self-perpetual machine, like a perpetual energy machine that just keeps going and potentially even adding to itself. So once we start getting some results, this is something that it becomes a priority for us. And we say, we're priorities. We deserve it.
Yeah, I love that. And I said, thank you for noticing that, for pointing out the fact that I'm already kind of showing the signs of doing the work.
Hmm.
uh, because yeah, I mean it's a long journey. It's not easy. It takes a lot of practice, patience, and sitting with yourself.
Yeah.
And I think even just the advice you gave, that's something that I'm going to take for myself, because I'll take those moments of sitting with myself, but I'll be on my phone or I'll be watching a
Hmm.
movie, kind of
Another
still.
distraction.
And I like sat there the other day and I noticed it, like, wow, like I literally went from my phone and turned on a movie and I'm like, wow, I'm just going from one to the next, like no breathing.
Hmm. Yeah.
So
I hear
yeah,
you.
it's hard, you know, there's a lot going on in this world, and it's hard not
Mhm.
to try not to pay attention, but I think
Yeah.
the advice you gave was perfect.
Those
What
phones, those movies, they're designed to be as addictive as possible, right? I
Yeah.
mean, that is literally the intention in their creation. They have some of the world's best psychologists who understand how our minds and our perceptions and emotions work, working on those programs in the phone to make it as addictive as possible. So I hear you. As soon as I start feeling a little bit of anger or shame or sadness, look who comes over here, right? It crawls right back up to my face. Yeah, it's a continuous practice and just identifying it. Like you said, I went from my phone to the TV, no breathing. We can start to make choices. Awareness is always the prerequisite to making choices. And there's no destination here. There's no practice or there's no end point for this. The practice itself is the destination. So just noticing those things and then making choices, that's where we want to get to. And we don't have to get anywhere else beyond that. There's no, once I reach this plateau here, everything is rainbows and butterflies. We can continue to do this. And I think that that really is one of the main points of life here is to continuously transform these patterns that create suffering and to transform them into more connection, more understanding, and meeting these fundamental human needs. Because right now, almost every aspect of our society is depriving that from us. And the way we adapt to it is through those distractions or addictions and these negative patterns. And it can go that negative route, or we can be a force to try and create a new pattern, a new path for people to follow. And I think that's very worthwhile.
Yeah, I would agree. And I have kids, so I look at it in that way. If they're watching me do that and not really take the time for myself, it's going to be repeated, and then it's just something that's
Mhm.
going to continue down my line and trying to stop it. So
Create
yeah,
something new.
yeah, absolutely. I was just, thinking about it today too. Like, I want them because they love their screens. They love, YouTube, they love video games. And I want to break that up a little bit because I get it, but it's not, like you said, it's designed to keep them there. And
Exactly.
I just love something so different for not only them, myself, my entire family, but
Right. And then
that
for the whole world around you, because so many other
Mhm.
people are going to be impacted by that as well. You want
Right.
connection, you want understanding, and you want to make incredible memories.
Yeah.
And we don't do that when we're staring at the screens. So, what you've got to do here is you've got to be more enticing, more validating, more rewarding than the screens are to your children. You've got to really win them over so they want to come back under your wing because it's not just the screens. There are so many forces out there that are trying to take their attention and to pull them away from their guiding star, which should be you and your partner. So the effort of working on yourself is a big part of working with them as well. So you can win them back over from all those forces that are trying to take them away.
Yeah. Thank you for, it's so funny too that kids are naturally more inclined to give up the screen. Like they'll, jump up right away if we're taking them out to do something or
Mhm.
playing outside.
Yeah.
Yeah, like that's definitely something that we need to work on in this household, and something, my partner sticks by religiously. Like he cannot stand the screen addiction,
Hmm.
but you know, it's a work in progress.
It
Thank you for
always is. Of
yeah.
course. Yeah.
But I wanted to know, I have a few more questions before I let you go. What's one lesson that keeps resurfacing for you in your own journey as a healer that you feel would be worth mentioning, or that could, be something that somebody else is experiencing as well?
Did you ever watch the original Scooby Doo's back in like the 90s?
I did, yeah.
Yeah. You remember how at the end of the episode they would always have the unmasking and well, let's figure out who the villain is and they pull off the mask and it's always the familiar character. It's Old Man Withers. Who saw
Yeah.
that coming? I would have gotten away with it, right? It's the character that was involved the whole time who put on this mask and pretended to be something else. We've all got that going on inside of us constantly. And this belief of I'm not good enough, I'm not worthy, I'm not deserving is Old Man Withers, always putting on the mask and showing up in our lives and creating all these problems. And what he really wants is just to be seen and to be valued and to be accepted. So what we really want to try to do is try to identify all the places in our lives where this belief, this core belief about ourselves not being good enough is showing up. So when we're angry and we believe that if this anger comes out, I'll lose my connections, that's I'm not good enough. When I'm doing a podcast and I get nervous in the beginning, I'm scared that I'm not going to perform or I'm not going to communicate, I'm not going to be liked, I'm not good enough. So here we always want to try and do the unmasking and see this belief of I'm not good enough in all the places that it shows up in our lives. And once we see it, well, Brene Brown, the shame researcher, she often says that shame, which is what that belief I'm not good enough is it's a form of shame. Shame thrives in the darkness. It's like a petri dish where you cultivate a bacteria and you put it in the drawer, and then you come back a few days later and it's colonized the entire dish, right? When we put this belief of I'm not good enough in the shadows and we bury it and we hide it away, it grows so much stronger. But if we can take it out and show it to the people who are around us and say, oh, you know what? I'm really scared to express this emotion right now because it's going to destroy I believe it's going to destroy my relationship with you. And I don't want that. But also, I got needs. I want to have these connections. I want to do these things. And this emotion's compelling me to try and get that. Usually what happens when we can take it out and put it in the open for other people to see is it immediately starts to dissolve and transform into something else. And just like you noticed earlier, there would be relief. There would be a sense of calm. Those are usually the things that happen when we can take this belief of I'm not good enough and put it out in the open for others to see. It allows us to be vulnerable. It allows us to feel the emotions again. We can pull that anesthetic out just a little bit each time. It's a continuous practice, but that's something I'm always working on. And every single person that I work with is going through it in some way. And every single person that I've ever met, like I said, including my teachers, these people who are in their 80s or older than me, they spend thousands of hours every year in meditation. They still have it too. And it's not that it ever goes away. It's never going to go away. It developed when our bodies were developing, when our nervous system was developing, when our mental patterns were developing, when our perception was developing, when our emotional circuits were developing. It is ingrained in who we are. And we don't want to get rid of that. We don't want to cut the head of the snake off. We want to embrace it. We want to comfort it. And we want to really connect with it and protect it so it doesn't have to protect us anymore.
Wow, you're like right on time because everything that you just said just resonated so much. It's yeah, the I'm not good enough. It's deep over here. Whew, I almost started crying.
Yeah, you're allowed to have those emotions. There's nothing wrong with it. We've all got that. It's so powerful. And yeah, you're not alone and you don't have to go through it alone. None of us do.
Yeah, it's I guess it's just not ironic, or it's just like it's so wow, just amazing to hear that and to know you're not alone, or what you're going through, you're not the only one. And I've seen it through all my friends, and
Yeah.
yeah, but it's tough to deal with sometimes.
It is, yeah. That belief of I'm not good enough often takes the form of I have to be strong and I have to do this on my own. And again, that's the unmasking. There's old man Withers. I'm not good enough. And we don't have to do that. We're not meant to do that. If we go back to our cultures, our indigenous cultures, when people were dealing with these beliefs of I'm not good enough or repressed anger, they had depression, whatever it was, the community would come together and they would have a ceremony and they would drum and they would sing and they would embrace this person and they would see the anger, the shame, the pain that this person was carrying as a wonderful sign that something in our community isn't quite working. And they would use that as a sign to address that. So this person's illness would be a wonderful, wonderful indication of our society as a whole. And that's what we really can start to do is come back together. And when we're feeling not good enough or we're in pain, is we should be able to go to people in our community, whether that's our partner or our family or our immediate people around us, establish the relationship so we can say, I'm in pain right now. And then ideally, we can all come together and address it together as a community, like how we're supposed to. We're social creatures and we are hopelessly dependent on our connections. We cannot exist without them.
Man, yeah, my mind went straight to like, well, how do we create the community? Because I
Mhm.
think the hardest part is finding the people that
Yeah,
you resonate with, that you connect with, that you feel safe with. How do we do that? How do
yeah.
we?
How many kids you got?
I have four.
4 kids. Okay, so and then you have your partner too. So
Mhm.
you've got an immediate nuclear community of 6
Oh, yeah.
people right there, right? It's more than enough to get started,
Mm.
and you would have your hands full
Yeah.
maintaining deep connections and attachments with all 5 other people in your community right there. And the more and more that you do that, the more you say, let's get rid of these phones. Let's go play with a stick in the mud. Let's interact together. Agenda free, interactive, person to person play, which is essential for our development. It's an actual emotional circuit that we have, this play circuit that all mammals and many other animals have as well. The more we can develop that capacity for, again, agenda free, interactive, person to person play, the more and more our relationships will strengthen. And the more that we create that with just the people around us, other people who are doing something very similar will start to gravitate towards that as well. And you'll also gravitate towards it as well. So, one step at a time, we might not be able to create an entire community like what we should have, but we can make little steps for that. And you know what? The more that we create that, the input that your kids are going to have is far different than the input that you had. And
Mhm.
then the input that their kids are going to have is far different than what we had. So we can make very, very big changes through the generations as well. It might not be immediate, but we're making big changes by creating that right now to whatever capacity we have.
I love that. I feel I don't know if this I wanted to ask one more question, but I loved the way this made me feel, but I'm gonna ask it anyways, just so
Mhm.
we can leave on a different note. If your word could whisper one message to the world, what would that message be?
You know, a lot of the times, I think that when we have this belief of I'm not good enough, which I think everybody in our society has right now, because our society creates it and it preys on it. There are entire multi-billion-dollar industries that are based on the belief of I'm not good enough, like the beauty industry, the Botox industry. People are injecting Botox into their face because they're not good enough. So there's so many aspects of our society that facilitate this belief of I'm not good enough. And when we believe that we're not good enough, a lot of the times we believe that healing is just, it's out of reach. I'm just broken. I'm not capable of it. It's not for me. I'm not worthy of it. Maybe other people can find it, but I'm just too broken. I'm too far gone. Whatever it is. I think that a lot of people have that. And I've had it and I still continuously come back to that same spot over and over and again. But the message that I would say is that healing, wholeness, these are fundamental aspects of the world that we live in. When we look out at the reality that we have, almost every living thing has the innate ability to heal. Plants, trees, fungi, animals, humans, all of us have the ability to heal and regenerate. And the wisdom that knows how to do that, it's inside of each one of us. When we went through trauma when we were younger, we disconnected from it, right? We learn to suppress our emotions, to disconnect from those feelings. But that center of wholeness, that wisdom that knows how to heal, it's still inside of each and every one of us. And while it might be lost right now, while it might be forgotten, while it might seem like it's too far gone, it cannot be broken. It cannot be destroyed. It can always be recovered. When somebody heals from an addiction, we say that they're in recovery. And recover means to find something that you lost. So, what is it that they're recovering? It's the person that they were before the pain. It's the innate ability to heal. So, through patience, persistence, having the conviction and the desire to heal, we can reconnect with that ability, that innate ability that's inside of each and every one of us. And you don't have to do it alone.
Thank you. That was beautiful. And honestly, I enjoyed this entire episode. I don't think I've ever cried on an episode, so thank you for helping me get in there.
Yeah,
But
absolutely, Devon. Thank you for showing up. Thank you for being willing to be personal here and bringing these ideas and your own story into this. And, just having the vulnerability to explore it while we're recording here and potentially showing this to other people, again, shows that you've done a significant amount of work with yourself. So I just want to say I see you, and I'm recognizing that right now. So thank you for doing what you're doing over there, because the more that we do this as individuals, the more we change the world. And this is not an individual task. This is a collective task. So when you're putting this platform out there and allowing yourself to have these conversations and sharing this information, is you're playing a major role in creating that community that you were just talking about a moment ago. So thank you.
Thank you, thank you. Oh, that made me feel so good. Yeah. Thank you, thank you. Okay, before we go though, I want, just in case anyone really liked this episode like I did, if they want to work with you, where can they find you? Where can they see your work, your website, any of that information? We'll obviously leave it in the show notes, but if you want to say any of that now, that would be great.
Yeah, my website is the easiest way to get directly a hold of me. We have a contact form and a therapy request form. And I always try to post, well, I won't say always, but I do post articles about things that we're talking about on here. I keep them short and I keep them sweet and straight to the point. So there's lots of information on there as well. And we're starting to put some social media out as well. So we have an Instagram and I have a LinkedIn. So you can find information on there as well. And yeah, we can drop those into the link description if you'd like.
Perfect. All righty. Well, thank you so much again. I really appreciate you. I appreciate your work. I appreciate how you're trying to change the world. I'm hoping that this episode reaches who it needs to. And yes, please continue to do this. And thank you for today. Like I said, I really, really, really appreciated it. So thank you.
Yes, thank you. I couldn't have done it without you.
All right, guys. Until next time. Perfect. Thank you.
Hey guys, it's Icarus here.
And Amelia.
And I'm here to tell you if you'd like to join our brand new adventure. Go to DevonTaylorAuthor.com to learn more.
And check out the cool items like the new bucket hat.
Yeah, and so much more. See you guys there.